It was just this Christmas that went by and things were getting busy. I had to start buying gifts for my family and had just went shopping, but I needed to get a gift for my little cousin. She's not hard to shop for since she likes things like My Little Pony or Peppa Pig, and she really liked, and I say liked for a reason, Max and Ruby. So while I was looking for gifts, I decided something like a Max and Ruby DVD would have been perfect, since she watched it on a daily basis. However, Christmas meant that most DVDs were sold out in most places, and I could have bought something online through eBay, but I didn't trust the condition some of them were in, so I was stuck in a rut for a while until that package arrived. I was at home still scrolling for that stupid DVD, and I heard the sound of something being pushed into my letterbox. I caught a hold of it before my dog did, and had a look at the packaging. It appeared to be really badly wrapped, with grease marks and stains on it by the looks of it. Naturally, I decided to open the package, like anyone else would, and what was inside surprised and confused me. It was a Max and Ruby DVD, but it didn't look like the ones I'd seen online. It looked like a kid had drawn on the cover with marker. The title was just Max and Ruby with poorly drawn illustrations on the front. There was no names or anything, but on the back of the box there was 4 episodes, each being blunt titles. Episode 001, Episode 002, and so on and so forth, up to the 4th episode, which was also titled the same as the rest. I gave the DVD a quick watch over, and what I saw was in good quality and surprisingly had no flaws. It seemed to be an official Max and Ruby DVD, just with a homemade cover. The main menu I thought was a bit odd, as it was blank, and just had the episodes from 1 to 4 shown like before on the box, the menu just being a plain white background with black text and nothing else. After giving it some thought, I decided to change the cover to something a bit more nicer, by printing off one that I'd found on Google, and tracked down the episode titles so they were more accurate. But I left the menu screen alone since it was self-explanatory. Christmas went fine and my cousin was happy with the DVD all through Christmas, but that was just because she hadn't watched it yet. On Boxing Day my family had gone out for lunch, and so left me to babysit her while they were away, and I decided then that it was a good time to put the DVD on for her. I put the DVD and let it play whilst I went to go finish my lunch. By the sounds of it, she had watched episodes 1 to 3, and I was about to finish my noodles when I heard her screaming from the living room. Dropping everything, I rushed over to see her curled up in the ball, screaming. I looked up at the TV and felt my heart in my throat. What I saw was the most horrific thing I'd ever seen. The frame was an image of Max and Ruby standing next to each other in complete darkness. But what made it so bad was their lack of faces. Their mouth and noses were gone, and their eyes were replaced with pitch black holes. All the while the colours were a sickening blood red, and there was a faint sound of static in the background, alongside what sounded like the Max and Ruby intro, just reversed. It lasted for about 20 seconds before concluding, and turning off the TV, which is alone weird since TVs don't usually turn off by themselves. I calmed my cousin down by saying that it wasn't real, and that she'd fallen asleep in front of the TV and had a nightmare. But in my mind I knew it was all real. My parents rang me up, explaining that they'd be out a little bit longer, in fact for the entire night, so I knew that this would be the only chance to examine this DVD more closely. I didn't mention it to them, and as soon as they hung up, I grabbed the DVD and proceeded to load it up on my computer. Upon loading it up, I noticed that the title of episode 004 was changed to Rip Mommy and Daddy, which sent a deep chill down my spine. My cousin was now sleeping, so I plugged my earphones in so she wouldn't hear what I was seeing. Usually an episode of the show would have 3 short stories, but this one only had 1. It started happily enough with Max and Ruby playing tag in the garden, while their parents watched them from the porch. However, something was off. The episode audio was playing in reverse, and their parents had expressions of sadness. It panned to the parents with melancholy expressions before the father said in a deep voice, "It's such a shame," before cutting abruptly to the sound of static, a loud scream before the sounds of 2 people choking. The sounds are so realistic it almost made me feel sick. It then cut to a image of Max and Ruby standing in front of a grave. The grave had Rip Mommy and Daddy written on it. They had no faces, and there was no audio in the background, save for faint static. It stayed on the screen for about 20 minutes, before cutting abruptly to black, and then to a scene with Max and Ruby in Ruby's room. They were both crying, however the crying and sobs sounded so realistic, as if they'd recorded someone that was really mourning a loss of someone. What happened next was one of the most disgusting yet saddest moments I'd ever seen. The scene then changed to Max standing in his room, standing on a chair with a noose hanging from the ceiling. Max then placed the noose around his neck as the screen slowly faded to black and the static sound resumed like before. Just then it cut to a scene of Ruby walking in on her brother. The sound of her screaming was playing in the background alongside the static, before cutting to a frame of her horrified expression on her face as the sound of a chair being falling over was played, and the same choking sounds from earlier playing in the background. The scene then lasted for about a good 5 seconds as Ruby's eyes returned to the same gaping black holes from before she started crying, the same realistic crying from before. The static kept growing louder and louder, drowning out her cries before abruptly cutting to black, and then changing to a scene of Ruby standing alone in the garden with in front of 2 gravestones, one type with the name Rip Mommy and Daddy, and the other Rip Brother. At this point I'd been sick, and I was sitting there all shaken. However, to my relief, the episode seemed to come to a conclusion at that point. I was about to eject the DVD when I noticed the same image from what I'd seen before on the TV. However, something was different this time. There was text above the 2 rabbits that said, "Death is our only release." There was no credits or ending card or anything of the sort, as it just stayed on that screen for a few minutes before concluding, and the DVD popped out of my computer. I sat there for a moment contemplating what to do, and foolishly made the stupid decision to break the DVD up as much as I could, and decided to leave the house. I then shoved the pieces down the drain. Afterwards, the days seemed to be normal. The only thing I'd experienced was a few nightmares, and by that point I'd completely forgotten about the DVD's existence. My cousin had gone home with the rest of the family, and seemed alright from then on. My parents were out for dinner, so I was left to the house, being the only one inside, and at this point, like I said, a DVD had practically left my mind, besides those few nightmares. However, I heard the sound of something being pushed through my mailbox, and at that point it all came flooding back when I looked at the piece of paper in which it was foldedly messaged. The only thing on it was text, and it overall looked like it had been messily folded up. The text on it was, "Death is our only release."